Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We are here with the course Fundamentals of Philosophy, and just as a practice of the each lecture, we always give the reference and the summary of the previous lecture what we have covered in the previous lecture. If you look at the lecture number 9, previous lecture to this lecture, we have covered the if we look back from the start of the series of this lecture, we have started from the three different philosophies, introduction of the three different philosophies and their role as a philosophical thoughts and the wisdom, including the Indian philosophy, Chinese philosophy. In detail, we have discussed all branches of the Islamic philosophy, including the metaphysics, epistemology and axiology. And in last lecture, lecture number 9, we have started looking at the contribution of the Greek philosophy. But Greek philosophy, just as I already mentioned, that Greek philosophical contribution cannot be discussed or cannot be taken without its looking at its historical perspective. The Greek philosophy is a philosophy which is basically the foundation of the modern European philosophy and the modern, we can say, the secular philosophy. So, Greek philosophy, just we have discussed in the previous lecture, but it consists of the four prominent philosophical era through which the Greek philosophy has developed and evolved. Because following the last era, then the Roman philosophy has taken the place of the Greek philosophy. So the Greek philosophy includes the four different very important eras, which is the Dark Era, which started approximately, there is a difference of the archaeologists about its time duration, approximately according to some of the archaeologists, it started from 1100 to 800 BC, and then Archaic Era, which includes from 800 to 480 BCE or CE, and then followed by the Classical Era. We can say the peak era of the philosophy of the Greeks, and that includes the 510 to 333 CE or BCE. Then Hellenistic era, which consists of 323 era to 146, and this era is followed by the Roman philosophy. If you look at the previous lecture, we already have covered that what type of philosophical contribution was there during the Dark Ages. Just as you can see that, and through common sense we can understand that the Dark Ages or the Dark Era is being considered where there is no intellectual philosophical or intellectual contribution can be found in this era. This era, we already have discussed that it basically includes the 1200 to 800 BCE, and we already have discussed the people before the archaic philosophy, or even at the start of the we can say the Dark Era ages. It's basically the people of the Greece were living just like all other people of the other world. They live in the small groups, and they were mostly illiterate, and there was nothing any intellectual or the philosophical contribution was being found, because the people were mostly rely on the intellectual ideas and the intellectual property given by their Olympians god. The only we can say the intellectual or the written document, or we can say the contribution this era has left, it's basically using the Liner B script used by, they have started the Machinian we can say manuscript in the writing I mean the alphabets. I mean previously in the start of the Dark Ages, or even followed by the previous eras, there were the linear B, we can say, and already we have discussed in the previous lecture that what is linear B and what is Mycenaean script. It is being replaced by the Phoenician alphabets, and these alphabets are even being used for even today for the vocabulary of the language. So this is the, we can say, the contribution we can found in the Greek philosophical contribution of the Dark Eras. And then if we look at the political situation in this era, this is, as I already mentioned, that the people are usually relying on the intellectual, social, religious, even the religious and the political influence of the we can say the Olympian gods. So the class hierarchy, because it's really important when we talk about the philosophical contribution of any era or philosophical contribution of any time, their social and the demographical factor is very important. So if we look at the class hierarchy in the Greek, it's really important to know that the prominent cities in the Greece were, which are basically being famous in the page of the history, are Athens and the Sparta. And just as the all other parts of the world, it's also being having the class system, but its class system in the Greece is based on the ruler class, and which is basically being called as aristocracy class, or the aristocratic we can say a group of the, we can say the dominant group of the Athens. And this class we'll discuss in the later lectures that the Pythagoras is also and later on the Plato and the Aristotle were also belongs to this class. And then there were the other class that was considered to be, I mean, next to the aristocratic class, there was the freemen, who are being considered the middle class of the Athens or the Greece as a whole. And then these freemen, because as they were considered and they claimed themselves to be the freemen, so they were being called as demos or demagogues, and they are basically the representative of the people of the middle class, or who are being called as freemen. And then the third class was the slaves class, who is basically we can say the only responsibility of this class is to serve the other two classes. So these slaves are mostly being we can say have no right in the demographics or in the society of the Greek. The difference between the Sparta and the Athens is that in the Sparta, I mean in these two states, in the Sparta, the aristocracy was more stronger than the Athens, and the demos or the freemen were more strong in the Sparta. So this is basically the main difference in between Sparta and the Athens. Rest of the class system was same in between all these two states. In this society, in the demographics of this society, there was a group of the people, there was a class that is being called as tyrant, and these tyrant are those people who basically take the things or the goods from the aristocratic group and distribute it among the poor. So in general definition, the tyrant is the cruel people are being considered that the tyrant. But here these tyrants are basically very much we can say compassionate towards the poor and the needy people of the Greece society. A woman's role and status was vary according to the different times, but in the this time period, the women's even as a goddess in the aristocratic class, they were being considered as they were being considered as a noble, but the women have no social role in the Athens or in the Sparta or as overall the history of the Greece intellectually, except if we found later on in the time of the classical era, where we can see some women's contribution towards the philosophical ideas of the later philosophers. Okay, after that, if you look at the religious influence of the, we can say the dark era of the Greeks, or we can say the Greek and or the demographics of the Greece. So the religiously, as I already mentioned, that the political group of the Olympian god is also having the hold of the religious influence as well. I mean, this is a polytheist society and believes in the multiple gods, and the Olympian god were considered to be the gods and the political, we can say, leaders of the Greece. And this polytheist society is basically, we can say, it started from 776 to till the time of the end of the Dark Ages. Okay, so far as the religious situation in the Greece in the Dark Ages, during the Dark era, there were many gods, and the king god was considered to be the Zeus, and he said to have taken up the residence in the Olympian in 1200 BCE, and his opponent was Hades god. And these two gods basically used to have fight, they are used to have war with each other as well. And other than these two main gods in the historical page of the Greece, there were 14 or more gods, followed by, I mean, heading by the 370 more gods as well. So these 14 were not only gods, but that also includes some gods and the goddess, and they are also being worshipped as an Olympian gods. And then the sub gods of these 14 gods were considered, or includes the 370 more gods as well. So it's basically, we can say, the characteristics of these gods that they were demonstrate as a religious, political, and the social influential figure in the society of the Greece. So they used to they used to eat, they used to feast, they used to I mean, war with each other. But in spite of that, they have the religious influence on the peoples of the Greece. Something, I mean, we can say there's some interesting things about these gods were that there were some goddess as well, and they have their attributes as well. I mean, they were being considered to be the attributed or attributive god as well, just like the goddess of Hera is the goddess of the marriage, and people used to pray before her for their marriage. And Aphrodite is the goddess of the love, and then Arid for the god of being considered as a god of war. Then Apollo is the god of the light and knowledge. And if you remember, inshallah we'll discuss in the later lectures that the Pythagoras was considered to be the son of this Apollo god as well. And then was Poseidon, she was the goddess of the ocean. Okay, so this is basically a framework of the political and the religious demographics of the Greek society. The Greek, we can say, Dark Ages contribution, just as I mentioned, there was nothing any notable contribution can be found. It is considered to be an intellectual contribution of the Dark Ages. Hence, there was some writings of the Homer and the Hesiod can also be found in this Dark Ages. Even in the Dark Ages, there were some writings of the Homer and the Hesiod's writings are, we can say, as a philosophical contribution or as a linguistic contribution being attributed at the time of the Dark Ages. The Homer philosophy is all about the, I mean, if you look at the what type of the philosophy of the Homer philosophy during the Dark Ages, because we know that the Olympian gods are having their social and the religious political influence, though, so the writings also being attributed to the Olympian gods. So we can say the Homer's philosophy is basically the subject of the Homer philosophy was the Olympian gods, their religious beliefs, their war achievements were basically the subject of the Homer's philosophy. and as I already mentioned, that they also consider to be also having the attribute of the human beings, and they also used to drink, eat, and they walk around in the streets of the Greece, and they also have the war with each other. They also have been, the Homer philosophy consists of their attributes, the attributes of the Olympian gods. But interestingly, the Athens youth, it was an obligation for the youth of the Athens during the time period of the Dark Era, that they have to learn the Homer by heart as a part of their education. It is their part of their curriculum. They have to have the to learn the philosophy of the Homer, which is basically the attributive philosophy of the Olympian gods. So Olympian gods in the Homer philosophy regarded as a human being, just as I already have mentioned, but they were not ordinary human being. They were considered to be the superhuman being with the superhuman powers as well. Unlike the other nations, Olympian gods not claim to create world, rather they create, they acquire it. They don't claim themselves to be the creator of the universe or creator of the world. Rather they say we have acquired this world. And the gods, these Olympian gods can fight, feast, play, make music, drink, deep, endure, and laughter as well. All the human attributes they reflect, but they were considered to be the superhuman being. And this is, as I already mentioned, ended up with the Miletus philosophy of the Dark Era. Okay, so this is all about, we can say, a summary of the Dark Era of the Greek philosophy, or the Greece contribution. But the most important thing is that we already have discussed in the previous lecture that this era has also some readings and some writings in the form of the Homer and the Hesiod and their poetry and their philosophical contribution. Okay, so if we look at the paradigm shift, or a shift of one thought to another thought, the shift from the fatalism philosophy and the mythological philosophy towards the natural philosophy, it basically consists of three different eras. The archaic philosophy, the classical philosophy, and then the post-classical philosophy, or the Hellenistic philosophy, just we already have mentioned in the start of the lecture as well. So the Greek philosophy, we can say, is a pre-Socratic, that is the archaic philosophy, then a Socratic philosophy, that is the classical philosophy, and the Hellenistic philosophy, also being called as a post-classical philosophy as well. So pre-Socratic philosophy, that as already mentioned, that it's basically considered as the natural philosophy, as the era of the natural philosophy, and I already mentioned that the natural philosophy is basically have challenged the mythological and the fatalistic thought of the Greek Dark Ages, we can say, wisdom. So we can say it is basically an initiative of the philosopher to awake and to we can say to aware the people of the Athens about their wisdom, about their philosophical and the intellectual properties. So the pre-Socratic philosophy, just as we said, that the natural philosophy as well, it includes the very famous philosophers and the scientists. So in other words, we can say that the pre-Socratic philosophy in the form of the natural philosophy is being considered as more a scientific philosophy than the we can say the natural or than the epistemological philosophy, because most of the philosophers have basically worked on the natural reasons and the nature, which includes the Thales, Anaximander, Examenes, Pythagoras, Heraclitus, Democritus as well. But these philosophers can be divided into three groups. The natural philosophers or the archaic philosophers are divided into three groups. The one group is being considered as the founders. The philosophers who have founded the philosophical thought of the natural philosophy, and these founders are being challenged by the other group of the philosopher in the same era. I mean, they were the philosophers of the archaic era, and they are the natural philosophers, but they have challenged some of the philosophical thoughts of the founder philosophers. And then there were the third group, that is the synthesizers, and these synthesizers are basically those philosophers who have synthesized the philosophy of the founders and the challenges, and given the mixture or the contribution of the both philosopher in the form of their own philosophy. So archaic age or the Greek philosophy is basically the next period of the Greek history, and it is described as archaic, and it basically consists from 800 to 400 BCE. During this time period, I mean, the population recovered and organized the political in the city state, I mean the police as a political situation or the political scenario, and it's basically comprised of the citizen and the foreign residents and the slaves. I mean, this is a political change or the social change occurred during the time period of the archaic philosophical era. I mean, as I already mentioned, that the archaeologists have the difference of opinion whether it is from the 700 or from 700 to 480 BC or from the 650 to 480 BCE. So I mean, there is a slight difference of the opinion of the 50 years as well. So this era includes the we can say the contribution which has basically formed or given the foundation of the Western philosophy. However, it has influence of the East, including the Persia, Egyptian, and the Syrian influence as well. I mean, the Western philosophy has mainly been influenced by, especially their scientific thoughts are influenced by this archaic era, but also have some minor influence of the Persian, Egyptian, and the Syrian philosophy as well of the same era, of the same time. Then we can also say that the Phoenician invented the skill of writing already in the Dark Ages. Later on, it is basically being through the their tales and their poems are being we can say as a part of the contribution of the literary or the writing of has been considered as the writing of the Greek philosophy. And already I mentioned that the main contribution of the Dark Era was Homer and the Hesiod's work, which is basically being followed by the archaic philosophy, and this has basically provided an awareness of the writing and the reading ability of the people of the Greeks. So if we started from the philosopher or the contribution of the philosophy during the from the Dark Era to the archaic era, so we cannot start without discussing the philosopher that is being called the philosopher, the Thales. I mean, when we say the Thales, it's basically considered, I mean, the name of the Thales comes to in our mind. It is basically, we can say, the philosopher. I mean, the Thales is basically considered the first philosopher of the Greek philosophy. So he is famous for his famous quote of all things full of God, and he also being attributed as the first philosopher in the history of the philosophy, because before the archaic philosophy, the only philosophy that exists in Greek philosophy as a general concept or the general awareness in reading and the writing, but the one who has basically aware the people of the Athens particularly, and especially and for all the people to think and to reflect by your wisdom. His name is Thales. His time period was from 624 to 546. So the Thales of Miletus, his name was Thales of Miletus because he belongs to the Miletus school of the philosophy, and he is considered to be, he is famous as a mathematician, astronomer, and the scientist as well. And he basically, we can say, his time period is being considered from the Greek city of Miletus, and that is basically, we can say, in today's time period, modern day Turkey as well. He was his philosophical thought was that he basically has given the idea of the one monastic concept of the start of the life. So he was among those 7 sages, mentors of the Greek, who are considered to be the first people or the first who have started thinking about the natural causes of the nature. So it is basically being called as one of the 7 sages in the Western tradition as well. So he was the founder of the Milesian school, as we said, mentioned that he was from the founder group of the archaic philosophers, and he has basically initiated the Miletus school of the philosophy. We can say that the Thales, without challenging, without countering the mythological and the fatalistic thought of the Greek philosophy, the Thales has suggested that the first cause of the existence is a monistic. He said that this universe came into being from the first cause. There was a first substance, and he called it that substance. He says that there was a start of this life, the start of this world, and that was a one substance, and that is a monistic substance. And he considered, and he has given the philosophy that that substance was the water. And why water? Because he thinks that the water is essential. It is essential need of the all things. So it might be the start of the life is being started from the one monistic substance that was water. We can say this suggestion brought no backlash of the charge of the impiety from the Greek aristocratic or the Olympian gods, because he has basically just given his philosophy, and he has not countered the philosophical thought already existing in the Greek philosophy. So his famous belief was his cosmological doctrine, that he, as already mentioned, he says that this cosmos are being started from the first substance that was considered as a water. And we already know that according to Aristotle, he thought that the water is the original substance out of which all others are formed. So later on, Aristotle has also supported and promoted the idea of the Thales as the first cause or the first substance of the start of the origin of the life is the water. He was one of the first Western philosophers who attempted to find the naturalistic explanation of the world. He basically, we can say, the first philosopher who has found the natural reasons of the changes into the nature as well, and rather than referring it to the supernatural and the mythological reason. He is one who basically discovered and predicted the solar eclipse. He is the one who first time has discovered and predicted the solar eclipse as well. And he recognized as we can say a single transcendental God monistic, and he, as already I mentioned, that he believes that this universe has a monistic start of its origin, that is none other than the one substance, that is the water. Okay, this was his metaphysical philosophy. His axiological philosophy, he had some common sense moral philosophy and advices as well. He says that we should expect the same support from the children that we give to our parents. We should expect the same from our children what we give to our parents, and that we should not let talk influence us against those who have come to trust, and that we should not ourselves that for which we blame others. If you're doing something wrong, we should not blame that for others if the others are doing wrong with us as well. So he believed, his axiological belief was that he believed that a happy man was one who is healthy. The health is basically the reason of the happy life. And if he's healthy in body and resourceful in the soul, and he's basically he can be able to a source of a teachable nature as well. So he was basically known for his theoretical and the practical understanding and innovative use of geometry, especially the triangles. He is basically, as already mentioned, he was mathematician as well. So he is basically the founder of the geometry, and especially the forming the triangles as well. Okay, the philosophical thought of the Thales are basically followed by his student, according to some of the archaeologists, was being, later on being contributed or promoted or being followed by his own student, that is Anaximander. So the next philosopher is the Anaximander. Anaximander is basically the pre-Socratic philosopher, and his time period, just like the Thales, his time period is from the 610 to 546 BCE, and he is a key figure in the Miletus school after the Thales, and he is a student of Thales, and also interestingly he is a teacher of the next philosopher, that is Anaximenes, and the Pythagoras as well. I mean, some people say that he was not teacher of the Pythagoras, he just met Pythagoras, but some archaeologists say he was a teacher of the Anaximenes and the Pythagoras as well. Okay, so far as the philosophy of the we can say Anaximander is concerned, he is of the opinion that everything came from a single substance. I mean, he is also a monastic philosopher, he is also the natural philosopher, and he also believes that there is a start of this world, that is a natural start of this world, and that is a one substance, that is a monastic substance. But unlike Thales, he says that is not water, rather he says everything has came from a single substance, but that is not water, but that is a boundless apeiron. And this apeiron consists of all the horizon and all the other substance, but that is basically equally contribute in that one substance. So this apeiron is a infinite, eternal, ageless, and encompasses everything in all the world, and our world is one of them. So other than he is on the same we can say point of the Thales, that there is one substance of this the start of this world, but unlike Thales, he said that this is not the water, it is basically the apeiron. Okay, his more interestingly, I mean other than the concept of the one substance as an apeiron, his philosophy of the unity of the opposites. I mean, he believes that this universe is basically originates in the separation of its opposites and present in all matters. I mean, this universe is basically existing because of its opposites, and he says that the universe, through though it is a continual play of the elements in the form of the apeiron, but it is basically working. I mean, all the substance of this universe are working continuously with separating and combining each other. I mean, he says that the apeiron substance are basically separating and combining each other with the law of the nature of the unity of the opposites. And he says that the apeiron, the unlimited, boundless, infinite, and indefinite, the substance is an eternal, which basically has maintained this unity of the opposites to create a force of these opposites, which basically creates the law of the nature. I mean, as a part of this apeiron, all the substances are combining and separating each other, which has basically maintaining the system of this universe. So Anaximander philosophy about the cosmology, as I already mentioned, and in the form of the one substance apeiron and the unity of the opposites, is that there should be a certain proportion of the fire, air, water, and each element in the balance that is basically called as apeiron. And if any of them, I mean, any one of them is primary, then it would conquer the other. I mean, there will be a equal proportion of all these fire, air, water, and each of the elements. His other interest, and we can say this is basically his philosophy of the one substance apeiron and also the unity of the opposites. Okay, his other interests were in he's also being famous for his mathematical thoughts. He was a mathematician, just like his teacher Thales, and he has explained some basis of the notions of the geometrical or the meteorological thoughts, and he attributed some phenomena such as thunder and lightning as well as a natural causes and to the interventions of the elements. rather than the divine causes. I'm saying, and he was the one who has basically given that the change in the thunder and the lightning is basically there was a natural cause in it, now not the divine cause into it. And he explained that the rain as a product of the humidity and pumped up from the earth by the sun. I mean, the rain is basically there was a natural cause for the rain as well. And he also basically given the geography, and he's probably the first who published map of this world. I mean, the Anaximander was the first one who has basically established or framed the map of the, although that map was not being that was being challenged by the later philosophers, but he's the first who has basically initiated to draw a map of this world. He was the first who has as a scientist gave the theory of the evolution, and he says that the evolution, that a man first was evolved or being there in the belly of a fish, and he was there, and he later on he has basically evolved from different substance, and then he came into the form of the human being. So he is basically the first who has given the evolution of the theory of the evolution, that is basically originating from the water. And Anaximander was the first, he also being considered the sun, a huge mass that was far away from the earth. He has basically attributed the sun as a mass, just like a earth, but he says that it is very far away from this earth as well. So, this was his metaphysical philosophy. So far as his axiological philosophy is concerned, Anaximander philosophy is about the cosmologies. I mean, there should be an equal certain of the proportion of, just like an apeiron in the form of the apeiron, just like fire, air, water and such elements is balanced. So he applied the same philosophy of the apeiron into the society as well. I mean, he said if any one of them is primary, then it would conquer the other. So same goes with the society as well. If the equal distribution of the burdens and benefits will not work, that it can imbalance the society as well. So his we can say his philosophy of the apeiron, or his philosophy of natural philosophy, always being applied on the philosophy of the justice as well. Okay. He explains that we can say by saying that the main philosophy working behind the metaphysical thoughts also workable into the human society and to the human life as well. So this is all about I mean, we can say the archaeological philosopher. The first we have in this lecture, we have discussed we can say discuss the contribution of the first two founder philosophers of the Greek philosophy, includes the Thales, who was basically the first philosopher and believes in the first monastic first substance, that is water. And later on we have discussed the Anaximander, who also was a monistic and a natural philosopher, but unlike Thales, he basically believes that the start of this universe is basically based on the one substance, just like Thales, but it is not water, rather it is basically the apeiron, combination of all the substance, but it is working through the unity of the opposites. So this is all about for today's lecture. We'll inshallah continue in the next lecture. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.